Film adaptations of video games have a complicated history, and by that we mean that historically they've been pretty terrible, but the past few years may have actually undone the bad video game movie curse.
Now who's gonna stop me?
Sonic the Hedgehog, Detective Pikachu, Angry Birds, the Super Mario Brothers movie. No, not that one. Oh, yeah, there we go. That one, that's a good one. Much of the challenge of adapting a video game for the big screen is preserving its energy without the interactive element that defines video games as a medium. That comes down to, in part, the villains. I'm Kristijan with WickedBinge, and today we're ranking video game movie villains from evil to most evil. So without further ado, let's start with the lesser baddies and work our way down to the most ruthlessly evil. In spite of what the title might suggest, it's tough to be that evil in the world of Angry Birds. King Leonard Mudbeard might be the head pig in charge of harassing the titular birds in the first movie, but his schemes at most amount to blowing up their village and stealing their eggs with the intention of eating them. That does sound pretty terrible, but Leonard and the pigs' plot is quickly foiled by Red and his avian friends, and from that point onward, the rivalry between the birds and the pigs degenerates into little more than a prank war. It's little wonder that Leonard's on board with teaming up with his frenemies in the sequel. The gluttony medal goes to King Leonard Mudbeard, but it's not because he's a literal pig.
What's a pig?
Planning to cook and eat the unhatched children of your enemies is just really messed up for a kid's movie. That alliance, though, comes courtesy of the threat posed by Zeta. This raptor scorn is out to unleash her fury on bird and pig alike, via a cannon that fires devastating ice balls at the nearby islands. Later on, she upgrades her artillery, filling them with lava for maximum destructive power. Zeta's aims might be a little higher than those of the pigs in the first movie, but she still doesn't take too long to reconcile with her former foes after her cannon is destroyed and she's made up with the eagle who jilted her. It turns out that all it took to stop this angry bird was a heartfelt apology and a relocation to a warmer climate. And that's not gonna cut it for the monsters that terrorize the new world of Monster Hunter. They range from the horned Diablos to the arachnid Nerscylla to flying monstrosities like the Rathalos and the Gormagala. All of these beasts pose a threat to the humans that stumble into their world, and they're just as likely to ravage Earth too if they can find their way through the connecting portal. While they're capable of immense destructive power and rack up quite the body count over the course of the movie, it's difficult to call these monsters evil. They're ultimately just animals hunting for food and defending their territory. Large and extremely deadly, sure, but still just animals all the same. In a similar vein, Jo Braddock of Uncharted is just a mercenary, only looking out for her next paycheck. All the same though, she's not someone you'd want on your payroll, since she's more than willing to betray and murder her employer if there's a chance for her to take all the treasure herself. Jo does wind up with a take of the treasure in the end, and one of the lost Magellan ships to boot. It just might be a bit much for her to carry. Jo Braddock pilfers the greed medal for being so in it for the money that she'll cut out the middleman and kill the guy paying her wages if it gets her more profit.
I think that belongs to me.
Braddock could really have used some psychic powers like those of our next villain, Mewtwo from Pokemon, the first movie. The first and most iconic antagonist of the many Pokemon anime movies, Mewtwo kicks off its bad streak early by killing all the scientists responsible for its creation.
The world's greatest Pokemon master is also the most powerful Pokemon on Earth.
It then hatches a scheme involving brainwashing humans and capturing Pokemon to build up an army of clones. Ash is only able to get through to the monomaniacal legendary by sacrificing himself to stop the fighting. Mewtwo takes some time to come around to accepting the series' familiar themes of friendship and cooperation between Pokemon and humans, but with an origin story like that, what could anyone have expected? The big bad of Final Fantasy, the Spirits Within, is also ranking relatively low thanks to a sympathetic motivation by a last-minute change of heart. General Hein is nonetheless one of the most destructive villains here after he sabotages the barrier around New York City, which leads to the deaths of many of its survivors at the hands of the ghostly phantoms. Consumed by grief over the loss of his family and hatred of the phantoms that brought him to that point, Hein then goes on to deal irreparable damage to the Earth by blasting it repeatedly from orbit. The biggest bomb here, though, is the Spirits Within's box office performance. Seems like JRPG villains just don't translate that well into film, at least for now. So how about FPS villains? Doom's Dr. Carmack doesn't take the lead in menacing the movie's heroes, but he's the one responsible for playing God with alien chromosomes and creating the film's many mutated monsters. There's no redemption for Carmack either, as he falls victim to his own experiments and has to be put down like the others. Also, Dr. Carmack gets the Darwin Medal for falling victim to his own mad science run amok. It's tough being a crazed scientist in a video game movie, but this guy's not winning any prizes for memorability, and neither are the Tomb Raider villains, which across 3 films don't amount to much more than amoral plunderers. They might claim ties to larger organizations like Powell's to the Illuminati in the 2001 movie, but the formula's pretty much always the same. They'll be either working alongside or competing against Lara Croft for the movie's central treasure, only to do some backstabbing and underhanded deals that land them solidly in villain territory and eventually earn their death at Lara's hands. Matthias in the 2018 reboot boasts the most evil ambition, namely turning the infected corpse of an ancient queen into a bioweapon, but he goes down just like the others. Not that we're surprised, Tomb Raider as a franchise has always been carried by its lead, not its villains. So it's down to the mad scientist of gaming to show these wannabes how it's done. Dr. Ivo Eggman Robotnik from the Sonic the Hedgehog movies may start off as a freelance agent of the US government investigating the alien presence of the blue blur, but he quickly morphs into a menacing supervillain pursuing the Hedgehog in order to advance his own evil schemes. Compared to many other video game villains adapted to film, movie Robotnik hews close to his roots as a mad scientist backed by a robotic army and the power of whatever supernatural strength he can get his hands on, whether that be the energy of one of Sonic's own quills or the assistance of the hapless Knuckles. Robotnik is one of the most faithfully represented villains in video game movie villains, and we look forward to seeing what diabolically goofy plots the Doctor has in store for us in the third Sonic movie. The credits teaser suggests that Project Shadow is on the horizon for the film franchise. Can a team up with Robotnik be far behind? Our next villain is all about teaming up, in the worst ways imaginable. Where Mewtwo of Pokemon's first movie wants to separate humans from their pocket monster companions, Howard Clifford of Detective Pikachu wants to forcibly bring the two together, fusing people and Pokemon with the power of a captured Mewtwo and a gas that drives Pokemon berserk.
I've devoted my life to perfecting the partnership between Pokemon and humans.
The legendary isn't a villain in this film, merely another victim of Clifford's villainy like so many others up to and including his own son. Mewtwo's mind fusion abilities may be what gives us the talkative Pikachu of the title, but Clifford's ill-thought-out plan for world domination offers little else in the way of positive results. Kind of weird though that this is the most follow-up we've ever seen of that random scene with Bill and Pokemon Red and Blue. There's a lot of competition in video game movies for the Pride Medal here, but we're giving it to Howard Clifford for looking to jumpstart human evolution via Pokemon fusion, of all things. Nintendo and Game Freak could be doing so much more with such an off-the-wall concept. Other villains only wish they could be drawing from such a rich continuity. Even so, Street Fighter's M. Bison is a real piece of work, a drug lord and arms dealer who racks up lethal KOs left and right. Whether he's kidnapping relief workers and transforming them into monstrous super soldiers, killing his own underlings and even his own wife, or duking it out hand to hand with the heroes, Bison is not a final boss to be messed with, let's just get that straight. His better-known film appearance comes from the 1994 movie, which reimagines him as a hammy, scenery-chewing dictator that's strangely more accurate to his video game incarnation than the corrupt businessman of The Legend of Chun-Li. We're not here to rank these movies by quality, but there's still no question that the first Street Fighter movie gave us the most memorably villainous version of Bison.
Anyone who opposes me will be destroyed.
Now, there's one video game villain with such vastly different film appearances that we have no choice but to separate them. Bowser in the 2023 animated Super Mario Bros. Movie is a blustering tyrant just like in his source games. And even if the film also captures his endearing comedic edge, Bowser's no less of a threat to everyone around him. He conquers more than his fair share of neighboring kingdoms, treats his minions as poorly as he does his enemies, and, as per long-standing tradition, kidnaps Princess Peach with the intent of forcing her into marriage. No amount of cartoony shenanigans or Best Original Song nominations is gonna fully undercut Bowser's commitment to the villainous bit, and it's pretty much only the lightheartedness of his franchise that keeps him from climbing higher. Bowser has to take the Lust Medal. The Koopa King just refuses to take a hint.
I told you that line wouldn't work.
Bowser can, however, take comfort in knowing that he's being immediately outranked by himself. When you tell your mom you want Bowser and she tells you, "Sweetie, we have Bowser at home," President Koopa is the Bowser at home. President Koopa, as he's known in the live-action Super Mario Bros. Film from 1993, got his position as the leader of a parallel dimension New York City via hostile takeover, and we mean very hostile. He's an even crueler boss to his underlings than his 2023 incarnation, not to mention a total creep to Daisy, and this thing being a live-action movie renders those scenes all the more uncomfortable. His designs extend far beyond Bowser's usual antics too, as he's got his sights on merging his universe with our own and establishing a reptilian dominion over all of humanity. He even kicks Yoshi. Ugly Yoshi, but still Yoshi, damn it. This iteration of the Koopa King is truly what you'd get if you stuck a T-Rex in the body of an 80s business tycoon. Ruthless, corrupt, and hungry for some violent mergers and acquisitions. For more dimension-hopping villainy, Shang Tsung of the Mortal Kombat films is a diabolical sorcerer bent on conquering the whole of Earthrealm after eliminating its greatest champions.
I have come for your souls.
He doesn't even pretend to play fair, openly cheating and undermining the integrity of the tournament intended to decide the fate of the realm. This is especially true in the 2021 reboot, where Shang Tsung targets Earthrealm warriors before they get the chance to compete in Mortal Kombat. He's got a whole army of underlings at his beck and call to throw at the champions too, from the hulking Goro to the stone-cold assassin Sub-Zero. He also makes it personal with several of the heroes by way of a lot of murder and soul-stealing. It's a real letdown that only the campy 1995 film grants Shang Tsung the fatality he so richly deserves. The head of the Assassin's Creed Templars organization, Alan Riken, is also out for control over the world, but he's no smirking evil for the sake of evil supervillain. Rather, he genuinely believes that by controlling free will, he can eliminate violence and make the world a better place. Riken's wonky moral compass arguably makes him even more dangerous, and in upholding his end of the centuries-long feud between the Templars and Assassins, he stoops to even lower means to justify his high-minded ends. Like many a Templar before him, Riken meets his end on the blade of one of their arch-enemies, but the film ensures us the power struggle won't end with him. There's nothing like an organized global conspiracy to ensure your villainous legacy will live on forever. Warcraft's resident big bad, Gul'dan, may not mess around with any of that for the greater good business, but he succeeds where many other villains fail in getting to conquer and subjugate his entire people, with plans to go even bigger.
The enemy is weak.
The mean green warlock is evidence that sometimes the orcs of his franchise really are the power-hungry monsters that they appear to be, and this film's adaptation doesn't draw itself out long enough to see Gul'dan getting his comeuppance or the orcs getting their lengthy redemption arc. Well, so much the better for the Horde leader's villainous ranking. Even so, had Warcraft not flopped, future movies would have done nothing to diminish Gul'dan's villainous credentials. It's a rare villain strong enough to carry a full film franchise. Resident Evil's Umbrella Corporation, and especially Dr. Alexander Isaacs, holds the record for quantity, if not quality, of villainy, and their combined efforts earned them our Bronze Medal of Evil. Their highly unethical experiments with deadly viruses that mutate humans into ravenous zombies span a full 6 movies, each continuing the story of Alice Marcus and her allies as they struggle for the fate of humanity. Isaacs is the true big bad of the films, being the man behind the T-virus plot to wipe out most of the Earth's population and rebuild it according to his whims. The rest of the Umbrella Corp doesn't lag behind him though, whether that's the antics of Isaac's own clone or the murderous AI known as the Red Queen. It's not every day you come across bad guys that can sustain nearly as many movies as they can games. If there's another villain that'll be able to keep a franchise running in the future, no questions asked, it's the sadistic Bad Bunny William Afton of Five Nights at Freddy's infamy. Afton is taking our silver medal, not for any grand plans of world conquest, but rather for the disturbingly visceral nature of his crimes. He's a serial killer who targets young children, brutally murdering them and stuffing their corpses into the animatronic entertainers at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. On top of that, Afton's somehow found a way to shackle the spirits of his victims, commanding them to hunt down any interlopers in the abandoned pizzeria.
I made you!
While the children get their revenge on Afton once they realize who he is, we all know that this isn't the end of this demented nightmare of a man. William Afton's sadistic, psychopathic character more than deserves the Wrath Medal. His catchphrase basically ensures he'll be around for many more movies to come.
I always come back.
The only thing that could possibly top Afton is an entire cult committed to torturing and killing their victims. Our gold medal for the most evil video game movie villain goes to the fanatical brethren of the Silent Hill films, who are all too eager to burn women as witches. It's bad enough when their behavior creates an alternate reality inside the town filled with monsters like the iconic Pyramid Head, but the sequel turns the dial up even higher. There, the new leader of the Order proclaims that their primary victim, Alessa, had been intended to bear the cult's god, one that would purge the world of all sinners. It's all the heroes can do to escape with their lives and foil what would have been an extremely twisted religious experience. It's no wonder that the top 2 spots in this ranking are going to antagonists that seem like they're on loan from gritty horror movies. Mustache-twirling supervillains are one thing, but deranged slashers compounding their crimes with a touch of the supernatural are threats no video game hero wants to face.